Então, eu vou, sem me alongar muito, para a gente tentar cumprir os nossos prazos, chamar o professor Jean-Loup para compor aqui a nossa mesa. E professor Loup Chappelet, da Universidade de Lausanne, da Swiss Graduate School of Public Administration, que vai nos falar um pouco sobre the stakeholders of the Olympic system. Então, a palavra é sua, professor. Thank you so much for being here with us, and feel free to give your talk to us.
Thank you very much for this introduction. I need a Zappet, exactly, because I have a lot of slides. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear colleague and friends also, I'm so glad to be here. It's a great pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm going to talk about the stakeholders of the Olympic system, as you can see on the slide, the title. There are two important words in this title. One is stakeholders, which is, as mentioned before, an important word in management. And at the beginning of this Olympic system, there was only one or two stakeholders. Now there are many. As you will see at the end of this presentation, there are more than 25 types of stakeholders. And there are also new stakeholders, stakeholders which will generate an innovation in governance, to connect to the talk today, to the title, the general topic of this presentation. And the second important word is system. There are many stakeholders, as I said, but they form a system. It's not only the stakeholders who are important, but also the relationships they have together. And as we say in systemics, it's the whole, that is the Olympic system, is more important than the different stakeholders, the sum of the stakeholders. So this is a system, and this is what we are going to discover now. Okay. No, I have to press on this one. No, but I have so many slides, it's going to be difficult if this doesn't work. Okay. Okay, this is the other one. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll put all this because question of time. Yeah, I'll start with a few questions. Of course, we know sport has grown a lot during the 20th century, and the question now is the 21st century with digital technologies and so on, and it's still a very important political, economic, and social force. Will it survive the 21st century? This is a question maybe we can ask, because there are many new actors, as I will present, many new stakeholders, and they want to be part of the action. Of course, also because they have a voice to raise, and they have also the financing of the system, as we will see. But we'll start, there are three parts, in fact, in this presentation. We'll start with the classic Olympic system, the one which was basically invented by Coubertin at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century. And with the Olympic rings, this is the one of the first drawings of the Olympic rings back in 1913. And then we will move into the regulated Olympic system with 11 stakeholders. And then finally, we'll go to the total Olympic system with these 5 new actors, which will require innovation in the governance of this system. But let's start with this. I will go very quickly because I'm sure you all know these stakeholders. Oops, sorry, not too fast. This is a classical, I'm using the expression Olympic system because I think it is a system, but the traditional expression is Olympic movement, maybe Olympic community one day. But this is a representation, a stakeholders map, as it is called, done by the IOC itself. A few years ago, it was on the website, even of the IOC, but it is not anymore, because as you can see here, the athletes are on the outer ring of this stakeholders map. And as you know, the official discourse is that the athletes are in the middle. The athletes are the heart of the system. So this representation has been abandoned, and I will propose a new representation. But let's move to the main Olympic actors, because this is too complicated. If you look at it again, it's so many stakeholders. We need to simplify a little bit to begin with. And of course, the organizing committees are very important. The acronym is OCOGS, COJO in French. They are important because this is a system totally centered around the Olympics. You hosted the Olympics in Rio. You all know the Olympics, but do you know all the stakeholders surrounding the Olympics? There is an organizing committee, a local organizing committee, of course. This is why I start with them. But there is also, of course, the IOC. Where is it? Doesn't work. You moved. Something went wrong because you changed your... Okay, yeah, now it should work. Yeah, here it is. The IOC, as you know, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, plays an important role. It designates the city which will host the Olympics, Rio. This was a designation that took place in 2009. Then you've got the national Olympic committees, like the Brazilian Olympic Committee, and there are many others, as we will see. Then you've got the international federations. They are important because they sanction the different sport competitions which take place at the Olympics. And finally, the national federations, which are in each country and which brings the Olympians to the Olympics. We heard about the Brazilian basketball federation. This is one of the national federations. There are many national federations, of course, around the world. And as you can see, these are the Olympic rings. Of course, this is not the official meaning of the Olympic rings. As you know, the 5 rings represent the 5 continents. But this is still important to understand that this is the most well-known symbol around the world, and this makes it this makes the Olympic system powerful. The 3 top rings are national organizations at the national level, and the 2 bottom rings, IOC and IFs, are international organizations. But all of these organizations, or most of them, 99% of them, are associations, non-profit association. This is a non-profit world. This is not a business. Non-profit. There are a few exceptions, but not many, and many of them are based in Switzerland, as you know. We discussed it before, and they are association under Swiss law. Let's start with the organizing committee for the Olympic Games. You have here the logos of many of these Olympic Games which took place, including Rio, of course, in 2016. But it continues every 2 years now. There are Winter Games, Summer Games, and they follow one after another. And there are many organizing committees working at the same time. Of course, the Tokyo 2020 organizing committee is not fully closed, but now it's up to Paris. There was Beijing 2022, Paris 2024, Los Angeles 2028, Brisbane 2032. I mean, it almost never finishes. This is the main task of the IOC, actually, to designate where the next Olympics will take place. And there are also some Winter Games, as I mentioned, but also Youth Games, winter and summer. Okay, very quickly, because I could spend a lot of time on organizing committees, but the IOC itself, of course, with the Olympic symbol, which is the best known symbol around the world, so very powerful in terms of marketing and sponsorship, designates where the next Olympics will take place. As you know, the IOC edicts the Olympic Charter. It doesn't only designate the city where the Olympics will take place, but it also edicts the Olympic Charter, which is a document which has evolved over the years and which evolves every year, actually, and new rules are added or changes of the wording are made. And also, it does not organize the Olympics. This is something you have to understand. This is organized by the local committee, but supervised or coordinated by the IOC, which, of course, keeps an eye on the organization, because the Olympics is the main product of the IOC, the only product, actually, of the IOC. And as you know, there was a big scandal in 1999. It's called the Salt Lake City scandal. And following this scandal, the IOC reformed itself. And this is why we can talk about a new IOC from 2000, they decided to have a maximum of 115 members. The IOC is not an association of associations, association of organizations. It's an association of people, physical people, members they are called. And there are 4 categories of members: the individual members, the members representing the IFs, members representing the National Olympic Committees, and members representing the athletes, the main stakeholders, as I have presented them, not the national federation, but all the other stakeholders. And in 1999, they decided to have an age limit also, to have a nomination commission, that is, it's called now election commission. How do you become an IOC member? You are co-opted to be an IOC member, so who are you? This is the work of the nomination commission to look at the CVs and decide or propose who is going to be a member, because the other members have to vote to decide who is co-opted. And also an important reform, the mandate of the president was limited to 8 plus 4 years. First 8 years and then another 4 years, 12 years altogether. Mr. Thomas Bach, for example, who is the current IOC president, was elected in 2013 in Buenos Aires, and he was re-elected in 2021, and he will continue until 2025. And after these 12 years, there will be a new president, maybe a woman. We'll see. Why not? There are IOC members who are women, of course. 37% of them nowadays. And not only this mandate limit, but also ethics commission, conflict of interest, code of conduct, and so on. This was adopted in 1999. Many other reforms, called governance reforms, at the time were done and are implemented nowadays, which makes the IOC a better governed organization. But still, the IOC is a very peculiar organization. You have here the headquarters of the IOC. Some of you have been in Lausanne. This is a big building on the lake. Most people were in Lausanne last September. They visited. It's quite an impressive building. More than 700 people work in this building, not all of them together, but it was, when I worked at the IOC, we were about 30 people. Now there are 700. I worked a long time at the IOC in 1980s. But still, the IOC is only an association in the Swiss law. It's not more than an association. It is a special association in the sense that it is recognized by the Federal Council, that is the government of Switzerland. It has a certain number of privileges in Switzerland, but it's only an association like FIFA, like all these international federations based in Switzerland. It presents itself as a non-governmental organization, NGO, and with close relationship with the United Nations and other international bodies. We will see that. And also you can say it is a self-governing body. From the governance point of view, this is a bit surprising when outsiders look at it. There are no supervision of the IOC. It is governing itself, self-governing body. Now we move to the NOCs. Of course, we can have questions maybe at the end. We'll see that. NOCs, National Olympic Committees, a few logos of its National Olympic Committees. It's how many NOCs? 206 NOCs all around the world. And this is many more than countries at the United Nations. I think it's 193, 95 now. Cyprus is one of them. But this is why I added this one, Guam. Guam is a territory of the United States. It is not an independent country. It doesn't have a seat at the United Nations. So it means that there are more NOCs than countries. There are also NOCs in territories which are not countries, like Guam, like many others, Puerto Rico, for example, and so on. What else? Of course, the main task of the National Olympic Committees is to send a team to the Olympics and select the Olympians, the athletes which will be part of the team. And there are also supposed to defend the ideas of Olympism in their country and territories. And they are recognized by the IOC. This is what gives them the right to send a team to the Olympics. Guam can send a team because its National Olympic Committee was recognized by the IOC. Brazil also was recognized. Brazilian NOC was recognized in the 1920s, and sent a team to the Olympics. I think the first time was in Paris, 1924. And of course, they collaborate with the organizing committees by sending teams and attending the Olympics and so on. And there are now also international federations, as I mentioned, as an important stakeholder. FIFA, of course, is probably the most famous one. Other logos here, like Equestrian Federation, Table Tennis Federation, Fencing Federation. They are important actors, stakeholders. They are sanctioning the competitions, but also it's often controlling several sports. This is why FIFA, for example, controls football, soccer, but also futsal. And football is in the Olympics, but not futsal. So it's why it is quite complicated. And the IOC recognize not sport, it recognizes international federations. This is, of course, the International Federation cooperates closely with the organizing committee. They organize the competitions most of the time. And also they are recognized by the IOC. There are about 40 of them, summer and winter, and another 40 which are recognized international federations, which can potentially become Olympic or be in the Olympic program. And without them, you wouldn't be able to organize the Olympics. And of course, without the NOCs, which send the team. And finally, the national federations, which are the gathering of clubs, in general, clubs at the local level. I put here the logos of a few Swiss federations, Swiss ski, Swiss tennis, and so on. There are many. There are, for example, in Switzerland, we have 81 national federations, not all of them Olympics, for example. They are members of both the NOC and their IFs. This is a peculiarity you have to understand. They are members of their international federation for their sport. For example, the Swiss Ski Federation is a member of the International Ski Federation. This is what will help the Swiss skiers to participate in the Olympics if the Swiss Ski Federation is also a member of the National Olympic Committee, which is the case, of course. But sometimes it makes the thing a little bit difficult. And of course, you see here the whole Olympic system. Now it works. The 5 rings, but in a different setting, a different design from the traditional Olympic rings, with a lot of exchange between the different stakeholders of this classical system. There are mostly recognition links, except the link between the IOC and the organizing committee, which is a contractual link. There is a contract which is signed when the games are awarded to a city and then an organizing committee is created. And this contract is called the host city contract. That's a contract under Swiss law. All the others are recognition link. That is recognition which can be given or withdrawn. And this system has functioned for more than 120 years now. It's very solid, but it's also very fragile, as we know. There were a lot of boycotts in the past, in the 70s, 80s, and we are talking again about boycotts, political boycotts, regarding the situation of the war in Ukraine for the Paris 2024 Olympics. And there are new actors, and this is a second part. I hope we are on time, more or less. 20 minutes, yes, so we'll go fast. the new actors, the media, and the right-holding broadcasters, this is the meaning of this acronym RHB, they play an important role. Of course, there were written press, radio in the 20s. Then there was television from the 60s and up to today. And now we have the social media. That's the 21st century. That's a digital rival of the social media. There is also the Olympic channel, which is a web TV of the IOC, which was launched right after the day after the Rio Olympics closed. And you can watch it. It's on the web. It's interesting, and it's a new venture of the IOC to discover exactly what they can do in the digital world. You've got the media, of course, in relationships with the IFs, with the NOCs, with national federation, with the organizing committees. Another important actor, the governments. Governments were around for a long time, but they started to be involved in the Olympic system in the 1970s, mostly by passing law regarding doping, for example, regarding sport in general. Now, of course, they are interested in the Olympic system. They are very close in general to the NOC of that country. They also are interested in the IOC because of scourges of sport like doping, like match fixing, like abuse and harassments and so on. And of course, when the Olympics take place in their own country, they are heavily involved because nowadays you cannot organize the Olympics without a strong involvement of the government for security, for example, or for all kinds of other reasons. That's a second important new actor or revenue since the 70s. Now the national sponsors, sometimes called the domestic sponsors, Kinder, for example, in Russia, that's just an example. There are many. They support the National Olympic Committee, they support the national federations, and they support also the organizing committee when the Olympics are taking place in their own country, because the domestic sponsors are restricted to one country of their National Olympic Committee. And domestic sponsors play an important role in the organization of the Olympics and are a big source of revenue, actually. In Tokyo, for example, they earned $3 billion with the domestic sponsors, much more than the international sponsors, which are the latest new actor or revenue actor, such as Coca-Cola, for example. Coca-Cola is a member of the top program, the IOC program for international sponsorship. There are 14 international sponsors at the moment, and this is a program which started in 1985 exactly, which is growing, but still smaller than the domestic sponsorship program. And of course, these sponsors, which pay huge amounts of money, like for 4 years, winter and summer games in a row, they pay about $150 million for 4 years. And often they are involved for more than 4 years, like 8, 12 years. Related to the IOC, related to the organizing committee, because all the international sponsors are automatically sponsors of the Olympics, and also to the International Federation. For example, Coca-Cola is a sponsor of FIFA. It's a separate contract, but still important, of course. Okay, so these are the 4 new or revenue in the system. The classic Olympic system is in color, in the middle, surrounded by these 4 revenue sponsors. And in addition to these 4, there are 2 more, which I'm going to present. They want, of course, to be part of the action. They are pressuring the system a lot. That's why I'm using these arrows. But 2 new ones, which were invented, if you want, or installed before the end of the 20th century, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, founded in 1984, and the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, founded in 1999. We could talk a lot about them, but we'll move now to the regulated Olympic system. That's the third and last part of my presentation in order to keep the time. Just a reminder of what I just said. IOC, Organizing Committee, National Olympic Committees, International Federation, National Federations, the 4 new, and the 2 last, CAS and WADA. What I call the regulated Olympic system. Don't remember, please, the relationships are even more important than the stakeholders themselves. And as you can see very well on this picture, the IOC is not alone, and it cannot organize the Olympics without all these stakeholders. Think of the Olympics without the media, for example. It would not exist. The Olympics are a media event. And now we move to the third part. Sorry, I want to say a little earlier. What I call the total Olympic system. A bit rushed, but there are many others. I'm not going to go through this list, but there are many other stakeholders which have appeared at the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century. For example, the leagues, the professional leagues. The professionals were totally outside of the Olympics before. It was amateurism. No professionals. And professionals started to appear. For example, in 1992, the dream team, the basketball dream team in the US was able to play in the Barcelona games, 1992. That's quite a long time ago. But now all the professionals are allowed in. And as you know, the professionals are often organized in professional leagues. For example, NBA for basketball. So the NBA Player Association has to authorize its players to take part in the Olympics. But also there are discussions now with NHL for ice hockey in the Winter Olympics. Also the tennis player, WTA, the women, ATP, the men, and so on. This is one of the new stakeholders. But I represented all these stakeholders around the classic Olympic system presented before and the regulated Olympic system. But the new ones are in blue. And I listed them here. The very new ones, which are going to play a especially important role in the 21st century, I believe. The athletes, not only the Olympians, but the athletes, and they are asking for more voice, and they will certainly play a more important role all over the century. A second one is the civic groups. I don't know if you had civic groups in Rio opposing the Olympics, but there are many civic groups opposing the Olympics or supporting the Olympics, but it's more often opposing the Olympics in the Olympic cities, and together with non-governmental organizations such as Human Rights Watch, for example, and others. A third very new actor are the entourage. These are the blue ones at the bottom. The entourage, the parents, the coaches, the medical team, the agents, all these people who surround the athletes and which play an important role and will continue to play an important role. The IOC has created an entourage commission, for example, in order to regulate a little bit the entourage. And finally, two more. Of course, the intergovernmental organizations. We are going to have a presentation by WIPO right after, the World Intellectual Property Organization. I didn't mention it on my slide. I mentioned the United Nations, UNESCO, which plays an important role for doping. Also the European Union, of course, in Europe, the Council of Europe. WIPO plays a role, maybe you don't know about it, but you'll hear about it, because it has passed a treaty called the Nairobi Treaty to protect the Olympic rings. And also it covers the intellectual property, thank you, the intellectual property rights, which play an important role in protecting all the properties, Olympic properties, not only the rings, but the flag, the motto, the hymn, and all these posters and mascots which are produced and which are protected and which bring revenue to the Olympics. And the last one, the courts. The Swiss courts, of course, because many of these stakeholders are based in Switzerland, but also courts from other countries. And you know very well that in Brazil, for example, the Brazilian courts have been involved, not CAS, not the Court of Arbitration for Sport, but the civil courts have been involved in a trial of the organizing committee, the local organizing committee of the Rio Games. But in many other countries, for example, in France, there was a case recently with the International Athletics Federation. In Norway, there was a case with the International Biathlon Union because the president of the International Biathlon Union was from Norway, and many other countries in the United States, in Italy, in Austria, and so on. So civil courts will play a role, not only the Court of Arbitration for Sport in the 21st century. So a quick summary of what I say. The classical Olympic system, which I explain in this book, published in 1991, a long time ago. The regulated Olympic system, another book, 2008 in English. Maybe some of you know it. The total Olympic system in this book, which was published right before the Rio game in 2016, and which has already evolved, and it's also available in French and in English. And some people are saying we should have another one, and they call it the WISA, the World Integrity of Sport Agency. WACA, sometimes they say, World Anti-Corruption Agency, you know, like the WADA for doping, but for corruption. I don't believe in it, and I don't think it will happen, but there are other solutions, but we have no time to discuss it. Thank you very much for your attention, and you have my email if you want. Thank you.